Good afternoon and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be your host for today's session. Today we have with us Dr. Jamie Huysman, one of our regular presenters, and he is going to talk about educate, energize, and empower our emotional intelligence. So before we get started, let me tell you just a little bit about Dr. Jamie if you have not seen him before. Dr. James Huysman built his innovative healthcare career on the premise that necessity is the mother of invention. His belief that the resilience of the human spirit and collaboration are key to our country's health future is the core of his philosophy. He is a fierce advocate of patient-centered healthcare and a workforce in touch with their own wellness. He has almost 30 years of medical and behavioral health experience in the nonprofit and for-profit corporate leadership roles. Today, he works in provider relations and governmental affairs for WellMed Medical Management, a San Antonio, Texas-based physician-owned primary clinic organization. Dr. Jamie, welcome to the session.
Thank you, Glenda, and thank you, friends. I'm going to say friends because I hope many of you have been to other sessions of Take Your Oxygen First. And those who haven't, I want to welcome you to new friends. I think there's nothing like having a community that supports each other, a community can learn from each other, and just a community, as you're going to hear, that can co-regulate. I'm a psychologist, licensed clinical social worker, trauma therapist, but my real love in life is working with caregivers. I was founder or co-founder of the Lisa Gibbons Memory Foundation. And Lisa and I wrote the book with a wonderful geriatrician, Dr. Rosemary Laird, Take Your Oxygen First. So that is the premise of the series, but that is also the prescription for you sacred caregivers who are doing what this country so desperately needs. You know, without us as caregivers, this entire healthcare system would collapse. I'm sure you've heard the numbers, but literally, $400 billion of in-kind care caregivers provide beyond what the healthcare system. If we all stop tomorrow, that would be it. The system could collapse. So we are a sacred part of the continuum. We should keep advocating to be that and to be more recognized and actually more supported. How's that? In the meantime, WellMed Charitable Foundation does a fabulous job of trying to support everybody by bringing on key speakers. I'm very grateful to be here to present to you as caregivers on educate, energize, and empowering your emotional intelligence. Really, that's your EQ, okay? You've heard of IQ? Well, this is EQ, and there's nothing I think caregivers need more than to do that. So I know it's 2022. I was thinking about doing something on New Year's resolutions, but we all know how those go. We make them. We try to do them. Sometimes we fall on our face. There are those amazing sort of heroes that will continue. But I figure let's make it easy. Let's keep it simple. Let's do a resolution of self-awareness. Awareness why emotional intelligence may be the greatest asset we can get to take care of our loved ones and of ourselves. So this concept of emotional intelligence, I think, has been bandied about, but many people don't really understand it as well as they can. As in terms of caregivers, sometimes it's tough to execute. So I'm going to go slow. I'm going to try to go methodical, and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. But I would love for you to see what resonates in your soul. We'll be able to get you, obviously, notes and PowerPoints and whatnot. So just take it in. Go from your head to your heart. And speaking of your heart, I'm going to ask you now to do something experiential for simply 15 seconds. You all tuned in. I think that makes you guys the heroes. Basically, what I always say is I'm basically talking to the choir. Those who tune in are already want to become self-aware, already are trying to improve. Now, listen, before, though, we really do something, we need to understand that there has to be something motivating us far beyond reimbursement, far beyond the attaboys or attagirls, something within us. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes with me, okay? As I close mine, with your feet on the ground, I want you to go inside yourself. Whether you're a caregiver, a clinician, working with caregivers in our country, just in healthcare, I'm going to give you 15 seconds to go deep. And if it's not you, okay, I wish it would be, that'd be the healthiest thing. What is your why? Why do you do the powerful work you do, the sacred work? Why are you even tuning in here to get, better, more actualized, okay? So it could be a person, a purpose, a place, it could be anything. But I'm going to give you 15 seconds to go find it, starting now. Okay, come on back. Let's come back to educating and energizing ourselves and understanding emotional intelligence. And why I did that, we don't have to get into what it is. If you didn't find something, that's another discussion, another presentation we can have. Don't worry, you're perfectly normal. But because internal motivation is always better than external, right? It really is. I mean, it's a river of life that runs within us. When you got a why, a purpose, and a dream, okay, not just to save the world or take care of somebody, you then can wake up in the morning when you're stressed, you're anxious, you're depressed. And then you can also now become aware about emotional intelligence. So I ask you to pull that why up anytime you're feeling kind of challenged in the morning. Make sure it's next to you. It is a river. So as a psychologist, I want to give you this. I don't want to make a new age section of Barnes and Noble for you. I want to tell you that there really has been a history that has got us to this day called let's learn about emotional intelligence. Look, Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Rogers, Adler, all the phenomenal therapists that started in the 1800s psychology, they were spot on. They were good. They built a great foundation. I was trained 30 years ago as a Jungian therapist. But I have to tell you, in the last 40 to 50 years, psychology has made much more quantum jumps, much more greater leaps. We are now looking at the mind, the brain, and how we can actually be our own therapist. And that includes the evolving of what this concept of emotional intelligence is. In the early 20s, we talked about social intelligence. Many of you heard of IQ, okay, intelligent quotient tests. They came in the 50s, right? All the way up to now, and not now so much, forgive me, but about, 26 years ago, in 1995, when a wonderful man, an extraordinarily bright guy named Dr. Daniel Goleman from Harvard University wrote the book called Emotional Intelligence. Okay, Daniel made this book. I would love for you sometime to listen to it, okay? It's been around a long time. It now becomes the basis of much of what we're looking at in the new psychology. And frankly, this is really the prescription for family caregivers. Okay, it is a prescription for our personnel at WellMed. It's the prescription for so many. It puts you in the driver's seat as being the therapist. Okay, and it's called basically emotional intelligence, why it can matter more than IQ. So Daniel Goleman wrote it. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, Audible, long after we talk today, but I'm going to familiarize you with the concept. This is for your 2022 resolution. It's self-awareness, right? And Dr. Goleman really said it best. He really did, especially with organizations like WellMed or IBM or what you name it. This is the most important thing. And as caregivers, I want you to insert yourself here. If your emotional abilities aren't in hand, I mean, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, and guess what? No matter how smart you are, how much you know about caregiving, how many books you've read, you're not going to get very far. And that's the premise of emotional intelligence. It's the premise of Dr. Goleman at Harvard University, that we have all these brilliant thought leaders and people who can tell us what to do and give books, and even our book, Take Your Oxygen First. But it's not going to be there. I mean, it can't go from your head to your heart on its own. Okay, if you are brilliant beyond belief, but you can't have empathy and you don't have effective relationships, guess what? In caregiving, you're not going to go far. And he took it one step further. Emotional intelligence was really the predeterminer, he said, and I agree with him. It's the basis of our emotional support response team at WellMed of most everything. The words as much as 80% of adult success, and I'll say caregiver success in there, just go ahead and substitute it, comes from our EQ. Okay, doesn't come from learning from a book, doesn't come for going buying the right items, the oxygen masks, the diapers, or getting somebody just to think and tell somebody how to do something. No, as much as 80% of our success comes from emotional intelligence, the basic, or EQ, okay? Understand what in WellMed, we're supported. I head up, they named me the Chief Compassion Officer. That's kind of quite a title, eh? I should have told you when I was looking at my why about that little child on my back. I'm a 66-year-old guy. Well, today's my birthday, so I guess I can't say it anymore. I'm 67 today. And I have a 10-and-a-half-year-old daughter. And I must tell you, I tell you all that because she's my why, right? She was a curveball from God. She's the most wonderful thing in the world. And no matter how much I know about parenting, as a psychologist, I realize I can't tell my daughter things. I have to show her social learning. I have to have a modicum of emotional intelligence. I have to understand her a little bit more. So whether you're a parent, a caregiver, or you're working at WellMed, this is really true. That 90% of the top performers in corporations around the country have really a high EQ. And they understand emotional intelligence. And I'm going to tell you all the 5 factors in it, but they understand it and they actually worked on it. Okay. Emotional intelligence, or your EQ, is responsible for 58% of your job performance. Okay. You can have a knowledge base on caregiving. You can know everything you want, okay, about caregiving. You can have practice skills, but unless you understand your loved one and you understand the social environment around them, I don't think you're going to have great success. As a therapist, I always have to start where the patient is at, not where I think they should be at. And you, as a caregiver, you always have to start where your loved one is at, not where you think they should be at, because you'll lose them. And in the work site, why WellMed continues to support these efforts are literally, look at this. People with a high EQ make $29,000 more annually than their counterparts. Now that's quantifying it. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? It means that it's not all about the head, it's the heart. I tell you this from the work site because I see family caregiving very similar to the work site, okay? At WellMed, we realize that the 5 components of emotional intelligence create a healthier culture, okay? Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills, all of what Dr. Goleman's work is, translates to an effective team. But it also, if you don't have it, it translates to a not confident, burned out, and not effective team. So think about it in terms of family caregiving. And we'll get to it again. If you're not practicing the components of EQ or emotional intelligence and your EQ level's lower, if you're not self-aware, what's my role here, right? If you're not self-regulating, like you're taking breath work, I'm going to do that at the end of our presentation. I'm going to give you a skill. Many of you who've tuned in know it already, but that's called self-regulation. If you're not feeling motivation, and there's ways to get to that. If you don't have empathy and you just keep telling your loved one, go here, go there, we're going to go do this, we're going to go do that. If you start doing things for them and creating this learned helplessness, that's not having empathy, you got a problem, okay? Even if your loved one has Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury, everybody can work and meet each other halfway. The definition of burnout, and I think caregivers need to hear this loud and clear, is when one person works harder than the other. Okay, so if you have long distance caregivers, remember to bring them in. If you're dealing with somebody with a neurological issue, allow them to do as much as they can. Meet everybody halfway. But the social skills, which we'll get into much more, that's the secret sauce. It truly is. So again, if we can extrapolate from WellMed or any corporation to the family caregiver space, look at emotional intelligence. If you understand it well enough, and we're going to really go through it, but we're also going to ask you to start putting your foot in the water here, because I think it's the best resolution you can make in 2022. But with emotional intelligence, you can decrease occupational stress. Isn't that music to a caregiver's ears? That if I had more of an EQ, if I did things necessary for emotional intelligence, I could decrease stress. What about improving decision-making? Gosh, if as a caregiver, I could just do the things for emotional intelligence, I could actually improve decision-making. Wow, what about reduced staff turnover? I could have, if I have to aid others, or if I won't burn out and quit my job or want to quit my job. I mean, that's us. How about our own personal well-being? Again, remember, always take your oxygen first. That would be the mantra. That was the name of our book. Just so you know, I got that book title when I crawled to a plane in Los Angeles and heard the stewardess say, "You give the oxygen to yourself before the person next to you." And I called the Federal Aviation Association, and they said, you have 19 seconds of useful consciousness. If you haven't taken the oxygen first, then both of you will perish on the ground. That's important. As a member, this is about you, a family caregiver. How do I increase personal well-being when I take my oxygen first? Well, guess what? If you have more emotional intelligence, just like we're trying to do at WellMed with our staff, you're going to have an increased leadership ability. Okay. When you do something, instead of tell somebody, people are going to follow you. People are going to be attracted to you. So emotional intelligence is the key for us at a company called WellMed. But I believe even more, it's the key to caregiving and a real healthy caregiver setting. All of that's the foundation of Dr. Goleman's work in 1995. Okay. It really is. Now, I'm not going to create a Pollyanna thing. I'm not into toxic positivity, think that things just happen on their own. So I'm going to show you and explain to you what's the barriers to actually developing emotional intelligence. I haven't gotten into it yet, so don't get lost yet. But I'm going to have you like entertain the notion that if you were open to this resolution, here's your obstacles. The obstacle is pretty simple. Everything that you might call a therapist for or a coach for could be an obstacle, including but not limited to depression, anxiety, relationship problems, confidence issues, anger, addiction, sexuality, the basic inability to feel happy with your life. These are all obstacles. Those things don't happen for no good reason. Many of you have been to my presentations when I talked about the brain and childhood, fight, flight, or fear or freeze response. For those who haven't been there, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Mind you, as I explain it, I do believe, like Glenda said, in the resilience of the human spirit and that necessity is the mother of invention. So I'm going to tell you, the greater the obstacle, okay, the more glory in overcoming it. I know we can do this as caregivers. I know we can because it's a gift for ourselves. But the obstacle is found in what we call the science of safety. Science of safety is the new psychology that says that our autonomic nervous system is the key to everything. Our autonomic nervous system is literally key to our internal organs, our hearts, our brains, our intestines, our gut health. And what does that mean? Well, the autonomic nervous system is what throws us into fight, flight, freeze, and fawn states. This is the obstacles of becoming emotionally intelligent to actually getting a higher EQ. So if we're biologically, which we all of us are, let's say we had a tough childhood, I did, and I came out looking at the world with a fight, flight, or freeze. When something came up against me, when a tiger or something, I would either, attack it, escape from it. I would definitely freeze like a possum, make sure that the predator thought I was dead. Or what we do often as caregivers, the fourth F, we fawn. The first being a biological response. The fawning is more codependency. It's more people pleasing. It's more giving up of ourselves to make somebody else happy. So the obstacles are clear. They're actually biological. They're about how do we regulate the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response inside of us as caregivers. And the science of safety, which I'm more than happy to direct you to places like Dr. Stephen Porges' work or Dr. Bessel van der Kolk at the Polyvagal Institute. The science of safety is our key. As family caregivers, we all come from the fight, flight, freeze because based upon childhood. So sit with me here for a moment. I'm not going to get too clinically deep, but understand that our lives and our personalities are pretty much dependent, and found out in the first 10 years of life. Okay, how we see the world, if it's great, accepting, if we're curious, or if we're paranoid, fearful, and it wasn't so good. Often, if it wasn't so good, maybe our parents weren't there unconditionally. We didn't attach very closely, which means an attachment issue. People maybe, kidded us, laughed at us, never told us the truth, gaslit us. There's a phenomenal doctor I'd love for you guys to look at on YouTube. His name is Dr. Gabor Mate. Gabor Mate. We use it as a series, his work, but he said the greatest damage done by neglect or trauma or emotional loss in childhood is not the immediate pain they inflict, but the long-term distortions they induce in the way a developing child will continue to interpret the world and her or his situation. Well, what does that mean? That's even worse for us as family caregivers, right? So if we go into adulthood with that fight, flight, freeze response, or we have long-term distortions, guess what? Now we got to take care of our mom, our dad, our brother, our sister, somebody that's really tough. We have what's called CPTSD, childhood PTSD. What the definition of that is like when the last 10 years of your life trigger the first 10 years of your life. That's the easiest way I could say it without getting too clinical. So family caregiving or being in bad relationships, they trigger the first years of our life. And this, if we haven't resolved the fight, flight, or fear, we haven't parented ourselves, we're stuck. We stay stuck in the 4Fs. We go into this complex PTSD world. That's an obstacle to emotional intelligence. Okay. We start having a negative self-confidence about it, this concept about ourselves. We have dysregulation. So something's in front of us. It's like the tiger. We start, going into the 4Fs. We feel a sense of threat, avoidance. When we're with our loved ones, we start re-experiencing sometimes childhood emotional flashbacks. That's all CPTSD. We have to look at that. And I'll do a seminar, we hope, on really looking at healing from that. But that's an obstacle. Okay, that's like PTSD too. I work with cops, firemen, military. That's an immediate impact. Well, CPTSD came from childhood. But I want you to take home the hopeful comments of Dr. Mate. I want you to remember, look him up. He's going to help you a lot in family caregiving, understanding things. But he's right. I'm 100% responsible for who I am in this relationship. Okay. My task is to free myself sufficiently so I can respond in the present moment, not from past programming. That's what freedom is. So no matter how badly we came out with fight, flight, or freeze, those are called neural pathways. We can create new neural pathways. So these new neural pathways, which is retraining our brain, can really lead us to the 5 pillars of emotional intelligence by Dr. Goleman. And that's what I want to go over now before I really give you the initiative to see how we start and how we can transform. So his 5 pillars are pretty clear. This is a book. Self-awareness, gosh knows, then you'll understand your own strengths and weaknesses. You can keep reflecting. Self-regulation, you can express your emotions because you can get in touch with your stress and anxiety. Motivation is the 3rd pillar. Guess it makes you more resilient. Okay, you become more self-motivated. I'll allude to how you can do that. Empathy, it's absolutely inseparable from caregiving. Okay, you got to come out of your own head. It's about compassion and understanding where your loved one is at. Okay, if your loved one has a chronic terminal acute illness, they probably have fear about their own lives. So the empathy is how can we help by being safe for them, right? And then there's people skills. That is, I think, the secret sauce of Goleman's work. And I'll explain to you in a minute. Being in safe, healthy relationships, able to build a rapport and trust with others, okay? Avoiding power and struggles and control. There's the 5 pillars. And why I think we should look at this in a hopeful way, even if there's obstacles, because the beauty of the new psychology is we can build bridges in our brain. We can create as family caregivers, believe it or not, new neural pathways. We can retrain our brain, and we really should. That's how it's going to be to take our oxygen first. That's how we're going to jump out of victim and martyr status. We can build bridges in our brain. It's called neuroplasticity. Okay. And as a psychologist, those terms were not available in the 1800s, but they are available today. And as we study scans and MRIs, we realize that we can become unstuck and truly develop emotional intelligence. So if you're a family caregiver and you're on this call and you're listening to a strategy, guess what? We can do this. I don't have to send you to some, lords to go learn this. Literally, even the experiential thing I'm going to do at the end is something you can do for yourself. But let's do this. Let's really start developing emotional intelligence. Let's start understanding what's holding us back. Let's not recreate the drama and trauma. Let's intervene on it. All right, so here's the 5 pillars of Dr. Goleman's work. Here's where your EQ, not your IQ, is vital to understand. The first is, as a family caregiver, you got to improve your self-awareness. Okay, we have to be strong enough to ask for feedback. We have to also understand that our friends are people that will tell us something to our face and not behind their back. So when we hear the feedback, we can't get shamed out. We got to go, great, let's collaborate. We got to recognize that we're human beings, not human doings. We're courageous because we understand fear. Okay, this is the vulnerable side. We're two-sided people. We have to accept our imperfections and we have to reach out for people to help us. We have to know a good leader is somebody who's humble and confident. We have to self-reflect. That's part of self-awareness. And in self-reflecting, we get to unlock thoughts and emotions that might otherwise be pushed under the carpet. It's great. What a way to mirror for people. Monitoring our self-talk is critical in self-awareness. If you read, and I'd love you to get the book, The Four Agreements. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Don't keep talking to yourself as the judge and the hangman and the executioner. Self-talk is the worst thing. We get into our minds. I bet you, as family caregivers, you did the best you could to get to this moment. You're doing the best you can. There's no need to beat yourself up. There's a need for forgiveness. I'm going to get into it, but self-awareness is setting boundaries. Boundaries, okay? Set a goal for the number of temptations you're going to resist each day. But boundaries will tell people who you are. And always question your decisions. Never think that you know everything about all people. In fact, again, you have to start where your loved one is at. You even have to start where your long-distance caregivers are at and go from there. It's so critical. Second pillar, which we can take hold of, is literally self-regulation, emotional regulation. You've heard me say it to you. When we're feeling stress or anxiety, okay, we can grab on if we can touch that and do something about it. We can promote an optimistic point of view when we're feeling negative. Okay, high emotional intelligence is you can process feelings instead of going to a shame mode. It's becoming emotionally resilient. Without a high EQ, you're going to go into a negative feeling place. You go into a shame spiral. You're going to be feeling hurt. You're going to carry grudges. Now, the third pillar of emotional intelligence is motivation. That's important.
Dr. Jamie, you froze.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
All right. It's unstable here, but as long as you can hear my voice, maybe that'll be good. If it continues, I'll just continue on my side. So motivation is great. And you tell me, Glenda, anytime, okay? And I'll be happy to adjust. I want you to understand that you got to check your attitude. This is a reflection. To stay positive, you got to look at life in a way of looking at things to be grateful for, even if they're not there. Like, I'm grateful that this did not happen. I'm grateful that my loved one didn't, pass away today. I'm grateful that my loved one's talking to me. Things that happen. Feel gratitude. It's part of motivation. Don't get into the catastrophe world. Build close relationships with your loved ones around you. I always say this too, meet regularly with your own influencers, your board of director people. And listen, celebrate the wins. Don't keep looking at the things you have to do as a super person. Do that. That's motivation. And that was Dr. Goleman's third pillar. Now, empathy, I cannot speak enough about. A family caregiver without empathy is almost blind in this world. Okay. The elements of empathy are seeing your world, but seeing their world at the same time. Again, starting with a person in front of you is not where you think they should be. Empathy is appreciating all human beings, not human doings. Empathy is understanding other people's feelings. Also, it's communicating that you do understand it. Okay, that's important. How we develop empathy is, guess how? We have compassion for ourselves. And I'm going to show you certain ways to do that for your own self. Okay, you can't be a light of empathy or of compassion unless you provide that light and that compassion for yourself. Why we at WellMed think empathy is so important, that 90% of our employees really think that it's the most important thing. We see people leaving during the time of COVID. Remember, COVID is one of those things you can't control, just like your loved one's kind of disease process, but you can deal with your response. So it's so important for us to understand empathy, because if our company doesn't have empathy, based upon age groups, we see 81% of the millennials flee, 76% of the Gen Xers run, and us, baby boomers, also leaving. People are leaving the work site more because they don't feel the empathy of their employers, and they're searching other ways out. Now, this, I think, is the secret sauce. Before I get to breath work and show you some cool ways to emotionally regulate, I want you to understand this one well. Dr. Goleman said the pillar 5 people skills is having healthy relationships. A healthy relationship is one where two independent people just make a deal that they will help make the other person the best version of themselves. So if you're taking care of a loved one, again, it's not doing all the work for them. It's not creating the learned helplessness. It's understanding that you're trying to make the best version of themselves in spite of the acute and chronic illness. They need to do that for you. Your family members have that to do to you. In our world, I always say this looks like a corporation. Someone's saying, let's explore our options, and everybody else is burned out beyond belief, which is true. So we talk to our employees, and I'm talking to you as family caregivers. It's time. It's time for you to get away from unhealthy relationships. It's also time for you not to be initiating controlling relationships. Emotional intelligence is not possible unless you are with people or you acting honestly, discussing, and clearly, authentically truths. Emotional intelligence can't happen unless there's respect among the two people, okay? Respecting your boundaries, even if you disagree with them. This is the terrible discourse we have in our country today, okay? We can't have emotional intelligence if we're just fighting and taking on our own position. Emotional intelligence is a family caregiver being able to compromise, willing to give something, willing to meet people halfway, okay? Making these decisions together, whether it's your, again, long distance caregivers or your loved one, involve them. When you go see a doctor with them, don't be the only person talking. If the doctor's only staring at you, ask them why they're not dealing directly with their patient. These are ways to feel safe. Healthy relationships allow us to get rid of the obstacles I described to you as children and adapt new ways. We need to feel safe. To feel safe, you can't belittle people. You can't judge them. You have to be there, and you cannot do anything except offer comfort. As a family caregiver, I know we get frustrated. I know we get upset, but that's the time when I'm going to show you breath work. We need to become proactive, not reactive. So healthy relationships is what Dr. Goleman's talking about, are people skills, supporting people and trusting. The acronym for trust is to reach ultimate success together. If you can accept somebody for their word, understand it's not about you, not making judgments, you can probably get to that place of trust. So I want you all to think about what I said. You drank a lot from a fire hose. Dr. Daniel Goleman's concept of emotional intelligence is something that we desperately need as caregivers. Kicking off 2022 with an attention and really concentration to raise our EQ for ourselves and our loved ones is important. But it all starts with you. It all starts with you taking your oxygen first. It's respecting yourself so others will respect you. So I know we have tough times. I know we feel low self-esteem taking care of others sometimes. Our lives are done. But it's not true. We look at caregiving as a gift that we need to take care of ourselves. We'll start respecting ourselves. And you as a family caregiver has to understand that maintaining boundaries is the protective fence for us to develop a high EQ, to develop emotional intelligence. What does that mean? Well, I want you, just like Dr. Mate, I want you to go to YouTube and check out Dr. Brene Brown. She's very good, very understandable, but she's going to talk about how setting boundaries doesn't make you mean. In fact, it keeps people safe. In fact, it's a fence that allows you really to be able to nurture yourself and have others respect you, okay? It so allows you to take time for your own feelings and thoughts. And when you think you can be something to everybody and you cannot say no, okay, your boundaries are porous, that's when we go into burnout. That's when we give our lives up and we're not nurturing ourselves. Remember that. So boundaries are important. When we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, ourselves included, we feel used and mistreated. So it's so important to develop emotional intelligence to do that. Now, all of us have come from families that we just didn't have any control over the parenting, right? I did. And I think our parents, I'd like to think, did the best they could. I can't blame them. I mean, there's some that cross the line that I testify in courts about, and I can. But for the most part, we do the best we can. But guess what? This is going to require you to adopt yourself. The most important relationship you could have is adopting you. Parent yourself. Be fair, consistent, and available for yourself. And that's the way we do it. The things that we didn't get as a child that created those obstacles, we can do it now. We can adopt ourselves. We can accept ourselves. We can forgive ourselves. We can appreciate ourselves. Look, what we see in the work site, that emotional intelligence is what it's really about. It's about resilience. And what family caregivers need the most is to develop a bank account of resilience. Resilience is literally the ability to bend instead of break. Okay, nobody but us understands that. We can't break, we just bend like the tree. When we combined EI, emotional intelligence, with our work at Emotional Support Response Team, ESRT, it's about resilience. So we combine it, it's about us being self-aware. It's about us having emotional expression and emotional regulation. It's us being honest. Listen, the child only wanted honesty. It's us having empathy and self-management. So you are a family caregiver, and here is the key to really setting the stage in 2022 for emotional intelligence. Is to develop resilience. It's to do things as a family caregiver to raise your self-esteem. Look, the higher your self-esteem, the lower your guilt. All of us feel guilt that we didn't do this or that. If your self-esteem is high and that's taking care of yourself, mind, body, soul, and stress, you're going to feel better. It's learning from your mistakes, not shaming yourself. It's learning from your mistakes. It's going ahead. It's resilience is understanding and accepting your strengths and weaknesses. You're just a human being. You don't have to be a human doing. If you're doing the best you can, that's that. You cannot save the person in front of you. You can't cure the disease. Okay, grant me the serenity, accept the things I can't change. You just deal with the response. So resilience is about having self-regulation, self-control. It's about overcoming difficulties. Resilience is about being optimistic, not negative in patterns. I think the most important thing, and it always will be, is to create that healthy social environment. COVID has had us isolate too much. Okay, don't confuse social distancing with isolation. If you're a family caregiver, I've got 3 recommendations. Don't isolate, and don't isolate. The connection to people, healthy people, is the key to our civilization and co-regulation. Look, it was the key to our kids too. That's why they should be in school all the time, even during the worst of times. They missed 2 years in COVID. But for us, we have to have good social skills. If you got a good friend, raise that friend up. Make sure they're 50-50. If you got a community, a church, synagogue, ashram, hang around healthy people. All right. All these are emotional resilient. So as a family caregiver, realize that love yourself enough, but understand this is a process, not an event. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So it's clear, you've heard me say this to you before, I'm a trauma therapist. You can't learn healing. You have to feel healing. Okay. The longest journey you ever make in your life is from your head to your heart. I'm going to teach you an experiential piece. I always do after every time I do this, which I taught to policemen and firemen, emergency medical technician, which takes you from your head to your heart. There's no way you can read my book, Take Your Oxygen First, and automatically become an expert in anything. You have to feel it. I remember I taught college for years, and until I went through my own trauma journey, I didn't even understand what I was teaching. You got to feel it. You guys are black belts. You're the shamans. You're doing the hard work. But understand the longest journey you ever make in your life is from your head to your heart. Don't stay in your head. Try to go to your heart. That's what emotional regulation is. That's what building resilience is doing things at the heart level. And the reason why it's important, I want you to understand, for emotional intelligence, the reason why nobody agrees on anything, because we don't ever see things as they are. We see them as we are. So if you're stressed, you're anxious, you're nervous, that's how you're going to see things. If you were raised like I was, the Deep South for all my life, I'm 67, you fill in the blanks what was happening in the Deep South. That's how we see things. But if we want to cut through all that, we do things like breath work, which I'm going to show you. We do things like yoga. We go out and walk. We develop socially regulated, healthy relationships. We become aware by doing things for ourselves. We parent ourselves. These are all ways that we can cut through all that and start seeing things together. So as an addiction counselor, I always borrow this from the AA program, but it works with anything in life, and it works with family caregiving best. You got to understand to grant yourself that serenity, accept the things you can't change. Okay. You can't change your loved one has Alzheimer's, cancer, Parkinson's, or disease. You can't, but you can have the courage to change certain things, and you can have the wisdom of the difference. It means you can control everything that happens to you. You can't control everything that happens to you in your life. You can control how we respond. So emotional intelligence, self-awareness, emotional regulation, motivation, empathy, and people skills, the 5 pillars, that's how we learn to respond. That's why I think we need to concentrate as caregivers in 2022. And here's your homework. 365 days out of the year, here's your homework. This is what's going to get you into the total surfboard of getting a higher EQ in 2022. Okay? It's taking care of your stress. That's it. Take your oxygen first. This is your homework. If you know you're in touch with yourself, if somebody makes you feel uncomfortable, okay, go do some breath work. I'll show you how to do it in a minute. Okay, if you're feeling dysregulated, go find a place to relax. Okay, if you're feeling really over your head, go find a therapist and learn biofeedback. Okay, self-hypnosis, because I'm a hypnotherapist. We can always teach you that. If you're feeling stressed out, go find a group. WellMed is wonderful with that. Caregiver SOS, if you're in Texas, you have great places to have support groups. All these are stress reduction techniques. All these open the door, really opens the door for your emotional intelligence in 2022. Okay, so to give us a few minutes for time and questions, I'd love to leave you with the beginning of learning how to have a high EQ. And that's called breath work. Look, I work with, as I said, with cops and firemen before they run to a burning home. Okay, their SWAT teams, before they react, they become proactive and they do breath work. Only takes 80 seconds. When I started working with family caregivers, I started seeing they had the same clinical makeup of my cops and firemen. Basically, you as family caregivers are running into burning homes when people are running out. You really are. And so I understand, just like my cops and firemen, that this works for you. And I want to show you how to use self-awareness, which is a key to emotional intelligence, to reduce anxiety and stress. I want to show you breath work. We have also mindful meditation to drop into. We're going to give you that too and show you where to go. But I want to say that our key is always going to be found in the moment. When you got one foot in tomorrow and one foot in yesterday, you're missing the most important creative time of your life, which is being here now. So we'll send this out. This is now available. Dr. Rapier and our charity, the Goleman Charitable Foundation, is now bringing drop-in mindful meditations for all of our family caregivers. Really. And Dr. Thoreau is somebody I worked with for years. She's fabulous. She's a mindfulness-based stress reduction. She's also a critical care nurse. She just does 20-minute drop-in sessions, and you could be anonymous. And we'll send you this out. We'll give you the times. But unlike breath work, this is something you can do just to develop that neuroplasticity, that new neural pathways. So understand this. At WellMed, we send people to live and work well. You're able to do that. Feel free. It's really for our organization, but they've got some great materials there. But I'd love for you also consider, if any of this is hitting home to you, to find a safe place or a safe person to get some therapy with. I write for Psychology Today, and if you go to psychologytoday.com, you put your zip code in, you're going to find some fabulous therapists. I want you to be mindful. You're going to want the ones that know how to deal with childhood trauma. Interesting enough, because us caregivers get triggered that way. If you got Audible, or you can go to Barnes and Noble, go grab Daniel Goleman's book. It's really worth the read. It really will go deep into these 5 pillars of really a self-awareness, of empathy, of motivation, of people skills, which is so critical. It'll do that. It'll tell you as much as what I am now. Look, if you're a family caregiver, I love Codependency Anonymous. If your self-esteem is based on people, places, and things, and you feel kind of rejected and don't feel good about yourself, even though you know you're doing a great job, this is a wonderful group. Everybody around there feels the same. It helped me, and it's free. And all you have to do is CODA.org. Look, Wellmed's got some fabulous support groups at all the caregiver SOS sites. Whether you do it online or you're there, this is the co-regulation. This helps you so much. Come to our mindful drop-in sessions. And right now, I'm going to show you breath work, because that is your therapist in your top pocket. I hope if you tuned in today, that you tuned in with an open mind and open heart. Developing emotional intelligence is easier than you think, but you got to be willing to understand these concepts. So as Dr. Wayne Dyer used to say, 2 roads diverge in the wood, and I took the one less traveled. It made all the difference. It makes all the difference in the world as you as caregivers. So I'm going to show you breath work. Listen, it affects our mind and our body. As caregivers, it's the greatest thing in the world, because we can shift our thoughts. We can go from despair to encouragement. We can go from depression to feeling energized. We can go from a stressed out moment, not get into a fight, not bite the bait, and tell somebody, we'll be back in 80 seconds after we breathe. It can engage us. Guess what? It can engage your loved one. You can teach it to your caree. Really, you can teach it to your kids, your partners. Doesn't require a license or certification. It's just your breath. What it does, it's the only thing in our autonomic nervous system that can calm us, our breath. It's the only voluntary thing we can do. It grounds us on 2 feet, transforms your body's chemistry, and it gives you control back. So I'd love to give this to you in 2022. I've seen cops do this with sergeants at the front. I think as family caregivers, it's the most powerful grounding technique we've got. I'm going to ask you, you don't have to answer this. Are you worth 80 seconds in the course of a day for your own self-care? I'd like you to try. I'd like you to trust the process. It's experiential. It's not brain salad surgery. But I am going to say that if you unlock the power of the vagus nerve for self-healing, you can have your own therapist with you all times. You really can. You can use it in the moment to calm yourself, or you can use it over time. Now, those who are listening, I don't want to commandeer and take your breath if you don't want to. This is a grounding exercise. If you'd rather not do the breath work, I'd love you to still remain. When I ask you to close your eyes, if you want to pray silently, meditate, go to a safe place you once were in life, all of these are grounding techniques that help our autonomic nervous system. However, those who'd like to join, it's a great, cool way of doing it. It's called 478. It was brought to us by Dr. Weil, who's an integrative medicine doctor. He tested it across the country and found out it was powerful. Look, you can go to YouTube after this conversation today. Just put 478, and Dr. Weil comes out. He'll do it for 2 minutes. He's so cute, but he's so powerful. You're going to love it. Here's how you do it. When I ask you to close your eyes, I'm going to ask you to breathe in through your nostrils for 4 seconds, like this. I'm going to ask you to keep it in your mind for up to 7 seconds. Okay. You can swish it around. You can take it like a washing machine. But when I exhale, when you exhale, and I ask you to, I want you to exhale hard with passion, like this. Loud, so your cats and dogs can hear you. Because that's what will trigger the vagus nerve response. Literally that. So we're going to try it 4 times for those who'd like. I'm going to kind of coach you through it, but believe me, long after I'm gone, Dr. Weil can help you, or you can be doing this on your own. Okay. Play the numbers. It's called 478. So let's try it together. Okay. Let's close our eyes wherever you're at. If you have shoes on, feel the floor through your shoes. If you're barefooted, feel the floor through your feet. With your back upright with respect. Let's just do 478 4 times. It's the beginning of developing emotional intelligence. It's really the heart and soul of emotionally regulating yourself. Okay. Your eyes closed, feet on the ground. Let's now breathe in through our nostrils for 4 seconds. Keep it in your mind for up to 7 seconds. Now blow out with passion for 8 seconds. Breathe in the calmness again for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Now, blow out with gusto for 8. Breathe in the calmness for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Now, blow out again with gusto for 8. Last time. Breathe in the calmness for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Now, blow out all the anxiety today for 8. With your eyes still closed, please, feet on the ground. I want you to go inside your body. This is self-awareness. This is feel that your chemistry has shifted. Literally feel the fact that you've produced the hormone oxytocin, which is your happy hormone that connects your neurotransmitters. You've done that. Our bodies are miraculous. This intervention of breath work is a miracle. You shifted the whole chemistry of your body. Okay, feel it. Scan your body. And when you're ready, come back to our Take Your Oxygen First seminar and understand what you've done just now as an act of self-compassion. A moment of the self-compassion can change your entire day, get you on the road to emotional intelligence. A string of such moments can change the course of your life. You can always get us if you want through breath work, TYOF@wellmed.net for any questions after this. But understand that emotional intelligence is not the triumph of the heart over the head. It's a unique intersection of both that allows us to be better caregivers and better people. So I can't thank you enough for tuning in. Really, you all are the choir. You're the ones who are going to go out there and do the best you can. Look, be the change you want to see in all others. Take your oxygen first, right? Use this breath work, pass it on. Know that better things are coming. They really are. So keep calm, and just breathe. Glenda, it's all yours.
Okay, if you have questions or comments for Dr. Jamie, if you phoned in on your telephone, you can press *6. That will unmute your phone, and I will call on you by your area code. If you're on with Zoom, you can just unmute your phone and I'll call on you by your name, or you can use the chat box. It is open, and we welcome any questions or comments that you may have at this time. Thank you, Seema, for the nice presentations comment.
It is kind of you. And remember, whatever you're thinking, I bet you somebody else is as well. You all are or I like to say the ambassadors, because you're here. How does this fit for you? How did you feel after the breath work? Okay, you took a lot in. You drank from a fire hose on what emotional intelligence was. So what's your feeling? Go back to your body. How are you feeling after breath work? Are you feeling any calmer? Do you think you can do this at home? I'll be quiet and listen.
I thought the breath worked really well. That's the first time I've ever done it the way you've done it, and it really makes sense. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Keep going with Dr. Weil on 478 on YouTube, and keep incorporating it in your day. Thank you so much for saying that. Anybody else? I'll ask you again. It's a rhetorical question, and I'll turn it back to Glenda to make all the announcements if nobody wants. Are you worth to yourself and the powerful, powerful job you have as a caregiver, a choice that you've made, and I'm sure your family is appreciative, but if not, you know, that's their problem. They need to see a therapist about that. But are you worth 80 seconds of your time of just breath work, 80 seconds of self-care throughout the course of the day? I won't answer that. You can answer that. And just know how much I enjoy you, love you, and wow, I don't know who just wrote that, but thank you so much. You are a first responder. Never forget that. You're running into burning homes when others are running out. Caregivers are sacred. This country doesn't tell you that, Wellmed Charitable Foundation does a great job of honoring it, but never forget, you're the most important part of healthcare in your loved one's life. Thank you. Glenda, it's all yours. And yes, you are worth it, Seema. I knew it and feel it.
Absolutely. We've had some comments that you can all see. And for those of you on the phone, we've had a lot of thank yous and people talking about their worth 80 seconds. So thank you for that. This is our last session for the month of January. We do have a jam-packed calendar for the month of February. And I encourage you to go to the WellMed Charitable Foundation website or to the Caregiver Teleconnection website, and you'll find the calendar there. If you don't find it, if you have difficulty getting to it, please go to our customer service representative. Let me give you that number one more time. I'll put it in the chat box. It is toll free at 866-390-6491. Let me tell you about our first two sessions. We have two sessions on Thursday, February the 3rd, one at 10 o'clock Central, and that's going to be with Lucy Barrelak. She's going to be talking about safe medications, important topic. And then at 1 o'clock that same day, Thursday, February the 3rd, Tam Cummings, one of our regular presenters, she's going to be back with us talking about the 9 most common dementias. And so that's starting our series again for this year. You will receive a feedback email coming to you in a few days. I'll include some of the information that Dr. Jamie has gone over with you today, some of the links, the names that he's commented on. So look for that. We would like your feedback. If you have a topic you would like to hear, if you have a presenter you've heard somewhere that you would like us to invite to be on the Caregiver Teleconnection, we'd love to hear about that. Won't take you long to do that, as well as giving us feedback for today's session. So I hope that you will all stay well and safe. Dr. Jamie, thank you so much for being with us, and I look forward to talking with you again next month. Everyone else, let's see, lots of happy birthdays for you, Dr. Jamie, and I join in that and hope you have a wonderful day with your family.
Thank you. Thank you. You're all my birthday gift. Be kind to yourselves, and everything will get better from there. Take good care.
Thank you so much, and I hope to see you on future calls. Bye-bye.